The notification came through on a Sunday morning while I was pouring coffee. A baby registry app, one I didn't recognize, one I definitely hadn't installed. Your gift for baby Hartley's arrival has shipped. I stood there staring at the screen for a long time before I understood I wasn't looking at spam. I was looking at my husband's account. My name is Renee Castillo. I'm 41. I spent the last 11 years married to a man named David, and for 6 of those years, we tried, quietly and privately, to have a child. We failed. Every specialist told us the same thing in slightly different language. Unexplained infertility, no clear cause, just bad luck stacked on bad luck. I grieved that. I made peace with it, the way you make peace with something that never asks your permission to hurt you. So when I saw baby Hartley, my first thought wasn't betrayal. It was confusion. My maiden name is Hartley. For one strange second, I thought maybe my sister had used my name for something. Then I clicked the notification, and I understood exactly whose baby this was. David had been shopping under a joint email we'd shared since college, one he'd clearly forgotten, still synced to my phone. 3 years of purchase history sat there in front of me. Cribs, car seats, a woman's name I didn't recognise, attached to a shipping address 20 minutes from our house. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I did what I've always done when something doesn't add up. I started pulling the thread. I work in claims investigation. My entire career is built on one skill: finding the version of events people try to hide inside the version they want you to believe. I closed the app, made breakfast, and told David I had a work trip that week. Then I started digging. The shipping address led me to a woman named Priya Sandoval. Public records gave me the rest in about 20 minutes. A lease signed 2 years ago in David's name and hers on an apartment 11 miles from our house. I sat at my kitchen table with that lease pulled up on my screen and felt something in my chest go completely quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't calm, it's just shock wearing calm's clothes. But here's the part that should have made sense and didn't. David and I had tried for 6 years. Every test came back inconclusive. And now, according to a hospital portal I still had login access to from a shared insurance account, Priya was 34 weeks pregnant. Naturally. No treatments, no specialists, just pregnant. I remember thinking, if this is really his child, then whatever was wrong with us was never really us. It was me. I didn't sleep that night. I filed for divorce papers the next morning, quietly, the way you'd file any other document. No drama, no confrontation, just a signature and a folder. My attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Carla Whitfield, told me the same thing my job had already taught me. Get everything first. Confront nothing. People only get careless once they think no one's watching. So I kept watching. It was David's mother who called me 6 days later. Her name is Joan, and in 11 years of marriage, she had never once called me sounding like that. Small, breathless, like she was bracing for something to fall on her. "Renee," she said, "I need to tell you something before David does, and I need you to let me finish before you say anything back." I sat down at my kitchen table again, the same table where I'd found the lease, and I told her to go ahead. What she told me took the ground out from under me for the second time in a week. 10 years ago, before David and I had even started trying for kids, he'd had a health scare, a testicular issue that required minor surgery. Nothing life-threatening. But the surgeon had recommended strongly that David consider a related procedure at the same time, something that would make future biological children essentially impossible. David panicked. He was 29, terrified, and he said yes to something he barely understood in a hospital hallway at 7 in the morning. He never told me. Not when we got married 2 years later. not once, across 6 years of tests and appointments, and me apologizing to him again and again for a body that was never the problem to begin with. Joan had known for a decade. She'd driven him to that appointment. She said she begged him for years to tell me, and every year he found a new reason to wait. We're too happy right now. I'll tell her after the holidays. I'll tell her once we start really trying. And somewhere in that decade of waiting, eventually quietly turned into never. I asked her the only question that mattered. Then, whose baby is Priya carrying? Joan's voice cracked. I don't know if David knows the answer to that yet either. I want to be honest about something. There's a specific kind of pain in learning your husband let you blame your own body for a decade over a decision he made alone at 29 and never once corrected. It's not the same as catching an affair. It's colder. It sits deeper. I didn't call David. I didn't need to yet. Instead, I called Priya. She picked up on the second ring, and when I told her who I was, she went completely silent for almost 10 seconds. Then, she said something I wasn't expecting. He told me you two were already separated when we started seeing each other. 2 years ago. We compared dates for almost 20 minutes on that call, and by the end of it, we both understood the same ugly thing. David had told each of us a different, carefully edited timeline, and both of us had believed him because neither of us had any reason not to. I asked her the medical question directly, the one I already suspected the answer to. Had David ever told her about the procedure? She said no. She said quietly that she'd assumed, the way I once had, that maybe the problem in our marriage had simply been me. 2 women, 3 years apart, blaming ourselves for the exact same lie. David showed up at my house that night, before I'd even decided whether to call him. His mother had told him everything. He stood on my porch looking like a man who'd aged 5 years in 5 days, and the first thing out of his mouth wasn't an apology. It was a question. Did Priya tell you it's not mine? I let that land for a second before I answered. No, David, I don't think anyone's told you that yet. I think you're about to find that out the same way I found out everything else, by accident and way too late. He didn't have a response to that. I watched something in his face finally understand what 10 years of silence actually costs. Not just me, but him. And now a second woman standing exactly where I used to stand. I didn't ask him to explain. I'd already learned everything I needed from people who weren't afraid to tell me the truth. I told him the divorce was moving forward exactly as planned, and that whatever he and Priya needed to sort out, medically and otherwise, was no longer something I had any stake in. He asked quietly if there was any version of this where I gave him another chance. I told him the truth. Forgiveness and staying were never the same thing, and I already knew which one I was choosing. The mediation finalized 8 weeks later. Clean, fast, no contest, because there was nothing left to fight about once the truth was already sitting on the table in writing. I used part of the settlement to do something I never expected to do. I started quietly volunteering with a fertility advocacy nonprofit, helping women push back when doctors dismiss their symptoms, when husbands withhold information, when silence gets mistaken for peace. I spent 6 years blaming a body that was never broken. I decided I wasn't going to spend 1 more year doing that. Sometimes, the lie someone tells to protect themselves ends up costing everyone around them far more than the truth ever would have. If you were Priya, would you have stayed with David after everything came out? Or walked away the same night Renee did? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every single one,